But when you were growing up watching this material, when did you decide to make the leap to start writing and creating your own stories, your own mysteries, your own crime thrillers?
You know, it was almost instant, because I knew that there was not a real Sherlock Holmes. I knew there was not a real Dick Tracy. But I also knew that there was a real Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and there was a real Chester Gould, the cartoonist who did Dick Tracy. So I didn't want to grow up to be Dick Tracy, because he didn't exist, but I could grow up to be Chester Gould. I could grow up to be Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And so that set me, initially I was trying to be a cartoonist. That was the Dick Tracy. And I did a lot of cartooning, and I thought I was going to be a comic strip guy. It was comic strips and comic books. This right around when comic books were started to be banned. I mean, I really literally saw Mad Magazine disappear, Mad Comics disappear,
right.
And this few months later, Mad Magazine came along.
Were you an EC Comics fan? Were you reading the comics that seduction? Were you being seduced? Were you one of the seduction of the innocent kids?
Well, they used to have a thing in Parents Magazine where they would list the worst comics for kids, and all my favorites were in like the top 5, including Dick Tracy, but they really did take it away from us. I mean, I didn't get to be an EC fan addict because I'd only read 2 or 3 issues by the time they were pulling the plug on it.
Wow.
And a lot of what I saw was from a used bookstore where they had a stack of them, 3 for 10 cents or whatever. And you could trade 2 comic books in for 1 comic book and that kind of
nice
thing. And I remember reading Johnny Craig's All Through the House, which was about the demented Santa Claus, which I am sure I was not supposed to see when I was 8, but I loved it, and I know it twisted me. And I was watching Alfred Hitchcock, and then later Twilight Zone, of course. I was attracted to the science fiction as well, but I think so I think it probably was more the movies and then later the TV shows.
Yeah.
There's a show called Star Trek that you should become familiar with.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, but my wife and I still are fanatics about the original Star Trek.
As you should be.
Yeah.
If I'd seen it.
If you had seen it. But I didn't really read a lot of science fiction. I read Richard Matheson, and I read Bradbury, and great writers.
I would call them more fantasists than...
Probably, yeah.
I mean, Richard Matheson, the first horror novel I read, I got I Am Legend from the Science Fiction Book Club.
I read the gold medal paperback.
That was it, man. I was hooked.
Yeah.
And then I went, it led me to Stephen King,
and of course they were publishing, I think they were called Shock, publishing Matheson short stories, many of which were done on Twilight Zone. But I never really was attracted to the hardcore science fiction writers like,
Asimov and Clarke.
They didn't seem, I think when you get into writers like Hammett and Chandler, and frankly Spillane, who you may know, I'm interested in Spillane, they were stylists, very interesting stylists, and I found the science fiction stuff a little clunky.